Context can have a very powerful influence on our thinking, and we can use context to our advantage to spur innovation. An example of how context can influence our thinking. Imagine you're sitting in your office, you're doing 1,000 things. Suddenly you realize that you have to go and tell Joe something down the hallway. So you quickly run down the hallway, you get to Joe's office, and you draw a blank. You cannot remember what you were going to tell Joe. You give up, you go back to your office, and as soon as you get back to your office, the thought jumps into your head. How does it pop back into your head? The reason it pops back into your head is you're back in the context in which you had the original thought. So memory is very much context dependent. Here's another example. Somebody asks you, where do you live? That seems like a very simple question, but it's not. The context will determine what answer is appropriate. If you live in Los Angeles, California, and you're visiting Kenya, and the tour guide asks, where do you live? It would make sense to say, I live in the United States. But if you're back in Los Angeles in a restaurant and you bump into an old friend and they ask you, where do you live? To say that I live in the United States is a little bizarre. So even our responses to very simple questions are context dependent. Understanding the impact of context can stimulate innovative thinking. How? New ideas are never triggered in a vacuum. New ideas are triggered within a context. So here are 2 suggestions for helping you to use context to your advantage. How many of you meet with your team regularly in the same context? You get together in the same physical environment for the weekly meeting. If you're trying to spur or trigger new ideas, it would behoove you to change the context. Go somewhere else. If your team is stuck creatively, go outside, sit on a park bench, meet in a cafe. By being in an entirely different context, new ideas may be triggered. Innovative organizations use another type of context to spur new ideas. They go and live in the world of the customer. The world of the customer is a context, and when you go to visit that world and you see how the customer uses your product or uses your service, new ideas may be triggered that you won't have if you are back in the context of your work environment. So think how you can use multiple contexts to spur innovative thinking.